Kia ora. Welcome to the first ever webinar with Scott Base. Thanks so much for tuning in. We're really lucky to have Rory, Luke and Charlotte with us today. They're joining us from Antarctica. And with me, I've got Dr. Esme Robinson. Esme's in our science team. She's an expert on the biology of fish and how they survive in extreme environments like the Southern Ocean. Just a quick bit of housekeeping for the teachers. You can ask questions at any time during the webinar using the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen, or you can send us a chat directly. I'll put your questions to our 4 experts here at the end of the webinar. That's all from me. I'll hand over to you now, Scott Base.
Well, hello, good morning. Welcome, everybody. We're super delighted that you've chosen this morning to join us. I hear there's at least 50 primary schools joined in. We can't see you, but I hope you can see us. We're having a beautiful day here in Antarctica. The sun is shining and we can see for miles out over the ice. I'm glad you could join us so we can share some stories about life here at Scott Base and some of the real key activities that we do. But first I'll introduce myself and the team. My name's Rory. I'm the winter leader here at Scott Base. This is my second winter. I enjoyed it so much the first time that I had to come back. The real big driver for me this time was because we're so far south, I wanted to see the southern lights, and that was a real special moment for me when that happened during our winter. I'll hand over to...
Hi, I'm Charlotte Middendorf and I'm the domestic medic here at Scott Base. I came down here, my family have been down here before as a group of scientists, so I thought I should come down and see what it's all about, and I've had a fantastic year living on ice. Luke.
And my name's Luke Kean. I'm the engineering supervisor for the winter, also the electrician, and dabble in a few other jobs. This is my second season down here. I came for summer in the 18-19 season and really wanted to see what winter was like. It was amazing and we'll probably come back again.
Okay, I hope you can see our screens. We're in the right presentation. Let me just make sure we're in the right one. Okay, are we in the driving seat now? Thank you. Okay, let us tell you a little bit about Scott Base. Page down. Oh. We're just having our small technical difficulty. Here we go. So this is the team, up close and personal. Our favourite photographs from our winter season, and now adorning the wall in our main corridor on the base. But we are just the latest incarnation of Scott Base. The original one was put in place by Sir Edmund Hillary all the way back in 1957. That was a special year when a lot of nations joined together to actually run a lot of science projects in Antarctica. So the photograph you can see here with them saluting the flag, that flag raising in January 1957 was the first building going in, the dining mess hall there. So Scott Base has developed a lot since then. It's a different building, a whole series of buildings, very different. But that original one is still there, something we take care of and maintain, and sits just outside our new base at the moment. We have some furry friends there as well. Unfortunately, the husky dogs left in 1994. They were a great help for those early explorers when they came in, traveling across the ice up onto the glaciers and through the mountains onto the polar plateau back in the day. We'd have all dearly loved to have them as companions over our time here. But unfortunately, there's no dogs in Antarctica at the moment. Page down. Oh, jumping ahead. So life is very different now compared to 1957 when Sir Ed was here. Things are a lot more comfortable. We've got a nice picture here of one of our field camps looking very toasty and warm, well supplied, well fed. Here, Scott Base is also supported by a wind farm. So we now get quite a lot of our electricity from those renewable resources. We don't use the dogs anymore for transport. We have our specialized snow vehicles called Haglands. And if you've ever been to the Christchurch Antarctic Centre, you've probably seen them outside, 2 tracked units doing a bit of a tour around the back of the buildings there. So life can be very comfortable here, living in Antarctica. Again, very different to what they experienced certainly in 1957 and all the way back when we had those early explorers like Scott and Shackleton. So it takes a lot of people to run Scott Base, and here's a really good photograph of the summer team. So we have up to about 40 staff who work and support all the activities, and they're really sort of congregate in 3 different groups. We have the ones who actually support the base and how we actually live on the base. So important people who actually manage the kitchens and prepare all the food for us, the people who look after the accommodation and clean the base. We have Charlotte, who provides all the medical support in case we have any injuries or illnesses. She looks after us. We have the engineering team represented here by Luke, and they're the ones who actually support us, manage to keep the lights on, keep the base powered, sort out the vehicles, help us with the science. And then we have our field support team. So the field support team keep us safe because we don't just live in Scott Base, we actually work in this environment, and we have a lot of people traveling to a lot of different places from here. So they keep us safe and skilled in dealing with the environment that we have. So a little bit like you guys, people working back in New Zealand, we work Monday to Saturday, normal hours, but we do get 1 day off a week. So Sunday's that special day, and we do really hope that we get nice weather and can get out. So for me personally, that's the time that I put my skis on and try and ski out around the island and see some different views and see what life and weather is out there. Charlotte?
We're also really lucky here that we have a close relationship with the American base, which is just over the hill here. So I spend my days off catching up with friends in America.
And I love getting out and about on bikes, and I'm quite a photographer. I very much enjoy that. So wildlife, landscapes, this place is just a playground for me for getting out and about and seeing some sights and sounds.
So a lot of fun to be had at Scott Base. Not normally, not just on a Sunday. It can also be other days of the week as well. So summer is an amazing time. The sun doesn't set for us from October all the way through to March. So 24-hour sun can do some strange things to your body clock, and sometimes we have difficulty sleeping, but it also means that we've got great opportunities to be out. The scientists can be out and support those operations. There's a lot of sun bouncing around, so one of the real risks that we have here is to get sunburn. So we have to make sure we protect ourselves and use sunscreen when we're out. But summer is a magical time. And it's also a magical time. I guess you guys really like wildlife, and we are really in for a treat when the summer comes round and these animals come back to see us. Right at the moment, we have some seals sitting out the front of Scott Base on the sea ice. These Weddell seals, they'll come ashore through the holes in the ice to have their pups. So we're now moving into the pup season. It's a really special moment. We have some feathery friends at the bottom. These are the emperor penguins. They come for occasional visits to Scott Base, and there are several colonies that we actually have here on the island. These are real tough birds. They are here for summer, feeding away, but also they stay in their colonies over winter as well. And that's when they lay their eggs and their chicks are born. And as we move through summer and the sea ice starts to break up and the open water comes along, we actually get the chance to see whales. So we've had several different kinds here, and you've got a picture there on the screen now showing the killer whales which come along and patrol out the front of the base. We've been fortunate to see them this year. We also have other kinds of penguins. That bottom shot, the bottom right-hand side, it's a great underwater shot of the Adelie penguins. Much smaller than the emperors. The emperors are definitely the biggest penguin out there. But the Adelies are quite small, cute, and they do walk in that really strange manner. Really nice to see them. These are the big animals that we have here, but we can also see the small ones which actually live in the ocean. So on the ocean floor, we'll see things like the sea spiders and the sea slugs. And we've also been fortunate to see the small krill. These are the ones which really are at the bottom of the food chain. And everything else that you see here really depends in some shape or form on that food chain. And it's not a big difference, very far from the krill to the whales that they feed off. So there's one of the smallest things in the ocean to one of the biggest things in the ocean. And winter, well, winter is very different. And here's the winter team. We've just finished our winter of 2020, and this was the crew who did that. I'd just like to tell you about the people on that screen. So we have our electrician, Luke. We have Charlotte, our medic, myself. We have Adam, who looked after the power, Lance, our chef, Amy, who looked after our field support, Joey, who was our carpenter, Keith, who looked after our water services, Kevin, our mechanic, Alan, who was our handyman for the season, and Hugh, who managed all the signs for us. A small team whose duty really is to make sure that we keep Scott Base safe and sound, secure over those winter months, and that we get everything ready for that influx of the scientists and the teams when they come back in summer. It's a special time. We don't see other people. There's not many flights, and maybe you guys like your fruit and vegetables, maybe you don't. We absolutely love them. So it was a very special moment when we had a plane in which brought an orange and a pineapple. One of my treasured memories from this place. A very happy time. Winter, well, it was one of the reasons that I came down here. I love to see the stars in the sky, and this place is an amazing environment to see stars like you've never seen before. You get the whole of the sky lit up because there's no light pollution. This is a fantastic photograph which Luke here, our keen photographer, was able to put together. So what you see in the green band across the middle of the screen is the Aurora Australis, or the Southern Lights. You might have been lucky to have seen that in New Zealand in certain places, but these are incredible waves of light which come across the sky, streaking across, and they are particles which have come from all the way from the sun, hitting our atmosphere and generating this amazing light, green flickering curtains. And it was a very special moment, certainly for myself, who'd seen about it and read about it, but actually to see it for the first time was amazing, absolutely breathtaking. Well, the primary purpose of Scott Base and the team and everything we do here is to support science. And the Antarctic science is a real key, a cornerstone of the activities here. And we look at it in three different areas. It's about the climate and then the atmosphere. It's about the coastal ecosystems and also the marine life. And we want to understand what part they all play in the global system, and how Antarctica is placed and what changes in Antarctica will have for the rest of us and the rest of the world. So I'd like to just go through and share a few examples of the science that we do. So the picture you can see on the left is from our ice coring team. They traveled over 1,000 kilometers from Scott Base. It's the furthest that we've gone. And the main part of their project is to use a hot water drill to penetrate all the way through the ice, which is incredibly thick. They went through 600 meters of ice this season, so they could actually get down through to the bottom where the rock and the sediment is. It's where the ice shelf is resting on the ground. And this is a bit like time travel. As you go back, you see what Antarctica was like in those thousands of years before. And Antarctica had a very different climate in those days. It was actually a lot warmer. So by going through doing this time travel, we can actually understand what was going on at that point. And that can help us when we try and predict what would happen if our world starts warming up even more. It's a really fascinating place. And this is maybe one of the areas that we'll see early changes if we have rapidly rising temperatures. It's where the land and the floating ice shelf join together. It's one of the first places we'll see that change. So the picture on the right, this is interesting new technology we're able to drop these probes in through the hole in the sea ice, that frozen layer on top of the ocean here. And this one with this special sensors looking for microbial organisms which live underneath the sea ice. This is their home. And in the summer season, they flourish and bloom underneath. There's this instruments there to try and understand what kinds we have, how much it is out there, and with the changing environmental conditions in the sea, what effect that has on those microbial organisms. They are really at the start of that food chain. And if we have a break in that food chain, it affects all the animals that you've seen in those previous slides. So it's really good to have an understanding of the density and the volume and the locations of this kind of life here on the sea ice. So interesting photograph there on the left. There's not many ice-free places in Antarctica, and this is one of them fairly close to us at Scott Base. In previous times, glaciers had covered this and they've retreated over time, and they've exposed these rocks. And here we're going rock hunting to get a good understanding of what the climatic changes were at that time. And again, it's one of those things that will actually help us do better modeling if other glaciers retreat in other parts of Antarctica, and what effect that will actually have for our global climate. Here we are, back to our feathery friends again, the emperor penguins. So there's a couple of colonies here around Ross Island where Scott Base is, and we're trying to understand where do they go. So what are their feeding patterns and what's their distribution? How far do they go offshore? How deep do they go? How often do they go? And what are they actually feeding on? And this information helps us when we understand the specially protected areas that we have, marine protection areas. We want to understand their fishing and their supplies that they have, and if there's going to be impact, or when fishing vessels come down, we want to make sure that there's enough for everybody in that space, and that we're not actually impinging on the areas where they generally go to feed. So having some data there to actually understand was really important to help with that marine protected area. Well, that was a really quick tour through some of Scott Base, life on Scott Base, the teams who work here, and the exciting science which is going on. So one of the key takeaways I'd like to tell you about is Antarctica often seems remote and isolated, and it really is remote and isolated, and can be quite a challenge to get here in the first place. But it's also huge. It's a huge continent surrounded by the great southern oceans, and it has a massive impact on the weather systems and climate we'll experience in the rest of the world. And now, having had the privilege to spend time here, a whole winter here, I truly believe in the special place that it is, how pristine it is, and how we need to protect it. And there's things that each and every one of us can do in our daily lives, which will actually go a long way to reduce the effects on the environment, on affecting Antarctica, and making sure that we keep this place safe and we keep the rest of the world safe. Thank you very much. And I'll hand it back to our team in Christchurch to open up the questions and answers.
Thanks, Rory, Charlotte and Luke. What an amazing whirlwind tour of our Antarctic science and a little insight into life at Scott Base. We're all very jealous that you got to see those amazing auroras this winter. Now, we've got quite a few questions that have come in from our viewers around the country. Shout out to Paeatua School. I used to live in Ikitahuna, and that's kind of close by. So the first question is, this one's a good one for you, Scott Base. How do planes land in Antarctica?
I'll hand to Luke for this one. He's been to the airfield more times than I have.
So the Americans run what's known as a compacted snow runway out on the big ice shelf. It takes a lot of work for them to keep the runway prepped for the entire season, because we do get planes all year round and we can have medical evacuations. But the two types of planes we get down are ones with wheels and ones with skis. The ones with wheels can land like a normal runway, The runway's very hard compacted snow. The ones with skis prefer a slightly softer landing, and so we have another place called Williesfield, which takes care of the ski planes. It's quite an amazing sight to see, but you'd be surprised what we can get in and out in terms of planes.
Brilliant. And Charlotte, this one's for you. How long do you stay at Scott Base?
A lot of this team has been here for 13 months, so we're scheduled to go home shortly. But some science teams will come in for a few weeks, a month, and then our summer team is here for about 5 months.
We can't wait to see you guys, and hopefully not so long. And Esme, here's a good one for you. What's the Latin name for penguins?
That's a tricky one. That's a good question. So just so people know, sometimes animals have a Latin name. So we talk about emperor penguins, but scientists give the penguins a Latin name too, and it's 2 words. And so for emperor penguins, we call those Actinodites forsteri, and the adeles, which are the smaller ones, the black and white ones, they're Pygoscalus adeliae. So that's their Latin names that scientists sometimes use.
How do you spell that? And Liz, here's a history question. I can answer this one. So, who was the first person to visit Antarctica as part of the question with us? And so, obviously, many of us know the tales of the early explorers, but the first person was Uitirangiora, who was a Rarotongan chief in the 7th century. That's the first person we know of who visited Antarctica. Here's another one for our Scott Base team. Aside from pineapples and oranges, Rory, what else do you eat for treats at Scott Base?
What else do we eat for treats? I guess that will be very different between all the people on base. I'm not a fan of chocolate, so you won't see me going around for chocolate. But for me, toast. And fruit toast. The team are laughing because it's so true. So my go-to when I need a snack or just that little top up will be some fruit toast.
Luke, what about you guys?
I'm not a particularly picky eater, so I will devour just about anything if it's in the way. But I do have a little bit of a sweet tooth. And I do have a small stash of lollies kicking around that I've squirreled away and brought down with me. So hopefully they don't run out before I get to come home.
And we're very lucky here that our chefs cook amazing food for us every day of the year. But we're also lucky that we have some home New Zealand ice cream. So Tip Tops down here too.
Ice cream's on the ice. Okay, and so what's the worst weather you guys have had over winter, and how cold did it get?
Oh, that's an easy one. So our weather conditions are set at 3 different levels, and we have something called condition 1, which is really the most extreme. So we had 5 days of a condition 1 storm back in August. And that kept us absolutely inside the base. It was too dangerous to actually get outside. The wind was extreme. So we had about 90 knots. I'm not sure about my mathematics in kilometers per hour, but it was more than 100 kilometers an hour at the base. Lots of swirling snow. You could not see anything outside. So to protect ourselves, we have to stay inside during those conditions. So that was certainly the worst storm. In terms of temperatures, I think the lowest we got to was minus 45, 46. But when you have the wind as well, you get something called a wind chill factor. And the wind chill factor on those particular days was below minus 65 Celsius. So distinctly chilly and bitter, not ones you want to be out in very much.
Oh, definitely not. And for those listening back in New Zealand, that's about 166 kilometres per hour if you don't work in knots. So here's a question for Esme. Do you think the ice will ever melt completely? And what can we do to slow down the melting of Antarctica?
Well, that's a good question. So we don't know yet whether it will melt completely, but if it was going to, it won't be soon. It wouldn't be in our lifetime. It's going to be a long time away before that would happen. But that's why the scientists are working so hard in Antarctica to try and find out how much of the ice will melt and how fast. So some of the ice is melting already. And so they're just getting an idea at the moment of how much it will melt over time. So I guess it's pretty hard for individuals to do a lot about that at the moment. And one of the things we can do though is still to reduce the amount of carbon that we're using. So lots of people will have heard about trying to bike to places instead of driving or walk to places, and they're all good things. But I think actually the most important thing at the moment is to learn as much as you can about how our climate's changing. So you're already doing that today, and you'll be doing more of that at school. And that means as you get older, there might be things that you can invent or change to help slow down the climate change. So you're already doing the right things at school at the moment.
Brilliant. Yeah, we all have a role to play in protecting Antarctica. So this is one for everyone, and I'll get you to go around and answer one at a time. What's the most fascinating animal in Antarctica? We'll start with our family at Scott Base.
Well, for me, I've been the winter base leader, so I didn't get much chance to see the wildlife here at the end of summer, but I did get a chance to see some emperor penguins swimming along the front of the base. And I think for me, that the biggest penguin of them all, looking so proud and tall and so colourful, certainly on the neck, that I think that would be the one for me. Emperor penguins rule.
I like all of the animals here, but there's also little plants here as well, lichens, and there are some around the base. We don't get very close to them, but we know that they're there. And I think it's pretty amazing that while we have to be inside, there's still plants down here that are surviving.
I was very lucky this season to get out with some of the science groups onto the sea ice and out into the surrounding areas, and I love working with the Weddell seals. They're an amazing creature. The depths they can dive, the length of time they can spend underwater, the life cycle, they're a fantastic creature. That'd be one of my top picks.
I was going to say seals too, so I'll pick a new one. The seals are wonderful. So I've been lucky enough to see a really large toothfish, which are huge fish that live underneath the sea ice in Antarctica, and they really very long, massive fish, and they were in an aquarium at the American base, and they've got huge eyes, and they stare at you out of the water from the swimming really.
And Esme, I'm going to say orcas. I think sometimes they're the most amazing animals, and when the sea ice breaks out later in the season, they come sort of right up the coast near Scott Base. So apparently, although I've never seen it, it's an incredible sight. All right, we've got a few more questions coming through. We haven't got much longer, but I'll try and get to them all. Someone here has asked, are there polar bears at Scott Base? I think that's a good one for our team down in Antarctica.
Well, we've searched all the bedrooms, all the buildings, and we haven't found any polar bears. So I'm pretty confident that we don't actually have any down here, and they're all up there in the Arctic, not down here in the Antarctic.
Here's a question. I'm not sure of the answer to this actually. Has anyone here ever been to Thwaites Glacier? No.
No.
Thwaites Glacier is a very long way.
Someone I think must know, it's a good question, that there's a really big research program happening at the Thwaites Glacier at the moment, and that's finding some really important results about climate change, but the New Zealanders aren't so much involved in that. So it's other countries, not so much New Zealand.
And here's a good question, and anyone who's been to Antarctica will know the answer to this. So first in, first served with the answer. Have you built an igloo? And if so, how do you do it?
Yes, I have seen an igloo built, and things got a little bit carried away, and it was far oversized for what we really needed, but it was a lot of fun. Last season, out on the ice shelf, you take a saw and you start cutting massive compacted snow blocks out of the ice, and you start them in a ring and you build your way up, and it takes quite a bit of time and quite a bit of manpower, but it is a lot of fun, and it's a pretty impressive structure. I could quite easily stand up in it and barely touch the roof. It was a long way, and I'm a fairly tall person. It was a very big structure. It was very much fun.
Well, maybe we'd love to see a photo of that, Luke. Maybe we can share it with anyone who's interested after this. We've just got time for one more question.
I can dig.
Brilliant. Sorry, we're running out of time. We've just got time for one more question. What's the temperature at Scott Base today?
We've just had the weather forecast broadcast over the PA system, and if I recall correctly, it's about the mid -20s, about -24 Celsius today.
And what about inside Scott Base? What's the temperature inside Scott Base?
Right. It's pretty much early 20s. I'll put it on the positive side. So that's why we're all sat here in shirt sleeves. So it's about 21, 22 Celsius inside the base. Very comfortable.
Brilliant. Hey, look, thank you so much for your time today. That's unfortunately all the questions we've got time for. We've still got heaps more, so do keep in touch with us with your questions, and we'll see if we can get the answers to you. Thank you so much to our team at Scott Base for joining us today. We wish you really safe travels home. We're so excited to see you. It's not very long to go now. Finally, I'd like to invite all the schools who joined to think about Antarctica and think about what it means to you. You might want to learn more about the animals. You might want to learn more about the people, how Scott Base works, how maybe one day you could work at Scott Base, or you might want to be an Antarctic scientist. We've just launched a education website, and there's a hub where there's a bunch of free resources and interesting things to download. So have a chat to your teachers and see how you can get Antarctica into your classroom more often. Thanks so much. Ka kite.
Bye.
Bye from Scott Base.